man's never around when you want him. There. Well, I guess that'll have to do. Bob.
Yes, Ma?
I'm going up to the house to change my dress. Now, you do a good job on the other side, too.
Yes, Ma, I will.
Well, see here, Bob. Do you call that clean? Look at there.
Oh, well, gee whiz, Ma. That clay in Weaver's Lane sticks like a burr.
Weaver's Lane? And what was this car doing in Weaver's Lane?
Well, Pa told me to take seed potatoes over to Weaver's, and after I got there, Mr. Weaver asked me to take them out to the field.
Nice of you, Pa, to do Weaver's trucking for him. Well, don't forget to do a good job on the other side, too.
Yes, Ma.
I'm getting tired going into town every Saturday looking like something the cat's drug in. Clara Weaver don't do it. You can bet your life on that.
Ain't you ready yet, Bob?
Almost.
I'm ready. Watch out what you're doing, you big smarty. I'll tell Ma.
Well, keep out of the way.
I don't have to.
Oh, dry up. Hey, there comes Pa.
Oh, Pa's got Oscar. What you gonna do with Oscar, Pa?
We'll take him into town.
What for?
The turkey wants him.
The butcher?
Yeah.
Oh, poor Oscar.
Hey, Bob, hold him a minute.
Oh, but I gotta get ready, Pa.
Well, then, let's put him in right now. You get in the car and take the rope. And I'll push and you pull.
Henry! Well, what are you trying to do?
I gotta take this calf into Turgey's.
If that calf rides in the car, I stay here.
Now, Berthy.
You heard me, Henry Wilson. I won't budge a step off the place. What do you think you're going to do with those?
I gotta get 'em sharpened, Ma.
Well, I warn you, Henry Wilson, you're not going to put those on my lap.
Ma, I bet Mrs. Weaver never went to town like this.
Ouch, doggone it.
It's a good thing Ma ain't here.
Be still.
I don't have to. Just wait till Ma comes.
Well, land of gosh, and do we have to go back all loaded down, too?
Oh, now, Ma.
Oh, Henry Wilson, mind what you're doing to the car.
Oh.
And for pity's sake, hurry up, or we'll never get home. Oh, Bob, look, you're scratching the fender over here.
Scratch it.
Oh, my. How do you expect me to get in this car now with this thing here?
I'm sorry, Ma. You'll have to go around on the other side or get in the back.
Oh, you. Oh, my. Now look what you've done.
I'm sorry, Ma.
That settles it. Do you know what I'm going to do?
What, Ma?
I'm going right down to the Bon Marché and get myself a new pair of stockings. 3-thread sheer. $1.19.
Hello, Hank.
Hello, Sam.
Why don't you get yourself a truck, Hank?
Well, I guess I could use one, but I can't afford it.
I'm telling you again, Hank, the truck will save you money and a lot of trouble.
It sure would be convenient, all right, but I ain't in shape to spend that much money right now.
Oh, shucks. How much do you think a truck could cost you?
I don't know exactly. What'd you pay for yours?
Well, if I'd have bought a new one, it'd cost me about $1,000.
Yeah, but you bought a used truck.
Well, sure, why not?
Hey, Pa, I'm going down the street a minute. I'll be right back.
That's a good-looking truck, all right, but ain't it kind of risky?
Well, it ain't if you buy a good truck.
Yeah, but how are you going to tell if it's a good truck or not?
Well, it depends on where you buy 'em. This is the second used one I got from John Akins. You know I drove that other one 8 years.
John Akins, eh? Ought to do all right at John's.
Why, of course you can.
How many miles did it have on it when you got it?
Well, I don't know exactly. But that doesn't make any difference because Akins does a real job of fixing them up before he sells them.
Well, I bought a used farm-all from John last year.
Been okay, ain't it?
Sure. But a truck is different. People don't trade in a truck till it's ready to fall apart.
The heck they don't. Say, here comes Joe Hunt. Now, he always buys used trucks. Fact is, Joe owned this truck before I got it.
I want to see Joe. I got some pigs I want to truck in Monday.
Yeah, you should have sold them this week. You'd have caught a better market.
Yeah, but I couldn't find Joe. I reckon he was busy.
Another reason for having your own truck. Hey, Joe.
Oh, Sam.
Hello, Hank.
Hi, Joe.
I just told Hank here about your old truck.
Yeah? She's all right, ain't she?
Oh, say, you betcha.
Say, I got a lot of good miles out of that baby.
What'd you trade for?
Oh, I needed a bigger one.
You must put a lot of miles on a truck in a year.
Sure do, a lot more than Sam will. Sam, you don't put more than a few thousand miles a year on a truck, do you?
That's about right, Joe. It'll take me 10 years to put as many miles in that truck as you did in one. Hank, if you stop to figure how much less I paid than Joe did, you begin to realize how little it's costing me.
Yeah, that's all right if she stands up.
Oh, she'll stand up all right if you buy her in the right place.
For instance.
Ain't no better place than John Aiken's. I've had 3 used trucks from John, and I wouldn't buy a used truck from anyone but an international dealer. John's in constant touch with farmers, and he knows their truck needs better than anyone else. And he puts them in tip-top shape, too. His mechanic, Pete Miller, the best in town. And John's got a good shop.
And another thing, you know John's going to stay in business right here. And if you should need a part, you'll always be able to get it right there without any waiting around for it.
That's true, all right.
There's a lot of fellas around here who get used trucks from John. That new fella that just started farming up the road a piece past your place, Jim Blake, he got his truck from John.
And Bill Wade picked up a dandy truck from John, too. He was telling me just today it's the handiest thing he has on the place. Charlie Ross is another of John's regular used truck customers. I was right there when Charlie bought his first truck. Charlie puts quite a few miles on a truck with that milk route of his.
You see, Hank, John figures his used truck business is just as important as his new truck business.
Yeah, he's got to keep selling used trucks to sell the new ones.
That's right. John's reputation depends on selling good used trucks in good shape with a lot of good miles in them. When it comes to selling new trucks, John can depend pretty much on the reputation of International. But when it comes to used trucks, then it's strictly up to John.
My gosh, Hank, if you'd quit loading that car of yours down like a truck, you'd get almost enough more next time you traded to make the difference. Look at that upholstery, will you? You know that's what a car dealer looks at, too, when he makes you a price. Why don't you go see John while you're in town?
Can't do her today.
Why not?
Ain't got the money.
Did you pay cash for that farm all?
No, I didn't.
All right, I reckon John will probably be willing to figure out a way for you to pay for a truck, too.
He did for me.
Why, sure.
You tend to things.
Pa, Ma wants to know if you can take her to town right away.
Bob, you take Ma to town in the car. I'm going in the truck.
Okay, Pop.
You're going to take me and Ma home before you go over to Northrop's, ain't you?
How'd you know I was going over to Northrop's?
Heard you must know the truth of the other day, Bobby trying to get over.
It is generally acknowledged by experts that a truck operator may reasonably and rightfully demand 3 qualities in his vehicle. Those 3 things are, well, it's just common sense that if you analyze this truck situation, you know, as a matter of fact, it might be a good idea to ask somebody who really knows. Let's see what a driver wants in a truck. Hey, fella, let me ask you a question.
Sure, what'll you have?
Tell me, as a driver, what do you want most in a truck?
Ask any man that sits at that wheel 8 hours a day, and he'll tell you he wants a truck that's dependable, comfortable, and easy to handle.
Dependability, comfort, and ease of handling, eh?
Of course, that's just my personal slant. They'd probably tell you something more about it in the office.
Thanks a lot. I'll ask them there. Suppose we talk to the bookkeeper. He should have some facts for us. Excuse me, Mr. Bookkeeper?
Yes?
Why, didn't I just talk to you out in the yard?
That's right. This isn't such a big outfit, and I keep the books, too.
As bookkeeper of the company, what do you want in a truck?
Give me a vehicle that goes farthest on a gallon of gas and keeps out of the shop.
They don't make any money when they're down for repairs.
They most certainly don't. I want them out there rolling, eating up the miles, but not the dollars. We've learned that our first consideration shouldn't be the purchase price, but the overall cost per ton mile. If necessary, we'll pay more for a truck that will last. We've found out that we simply can't afford a low-priced truck that'll be a constant bill of expense after a few thousand miles. Is that all?
Yes, I guess it is. He knows what he wants. Suppose we talk to the big boss. Pardon me, but could I have...
You want something?
You're the president, and the bookkeeper, and the driver?
Why not? As I told you, this is a small company and we have to double up.
Well, as president, what do you want?
That's easy. I want a truck that fits my job. A truck that hauls and keeps on hauling. A truck that gives me dependable transportation and long life.
I get you. Now let's see what we have. Comfort, ease of handling, low operating cost, and dependability of performance for the particular job, and long life.
That's what any operator wants. But just try and find a truck like that.
Pardon me, sir.
Come in.
I think I know where you can find that truck.
You do, eh? Who are you?
My name is Martin. Bill Martin.
Dodge job-rated trucks. It seems to me I've heard of that job rating. What's it mean to me?
First, I'd like to analyze your trucking problems. Then we'll talk about job rating.
You mean you want to sell me a truck?
Not right now. Maybe later. I'll let you be the judge.
And that's what I intend to be.
Let's look at it this way. Suppose you were buying a pair of shoes.
What have shoes got to do with trucks?
I'll try to show you. Just imagine you were in a shoe store, and the first pair the salesman showed you was too small.
It's too tight.
Well, maybe it is a little snug.
Snug? Hell, it hurts my foot. I'd be blistered with that shoe.
Oh, yes. That is too small.
Of course it is.
Well, here, just try this. I'll lace it up. It's a little larger and should be just right for you. There.
At least it doesn't pinch. And no wonder. It's too large.
Well, of course, you could put on a couple of extra pair of socks.
See here, can't you fit me?
Well, what size do you wear?
A 10C.
All we carry is 8A and 12D.
Only two sizes?
Well, just about everybody can wear either one or the other, so that's all the company makes.
Well, they don't make any that fit me. Put my shoe on and let me out of here.
And a lot of people sell trucks on that same basis. The result is you may get a truck that's either too large or too small. And a truck that doesn't fit your job will pinch your pocketbook just as the wrong size shoe will pinch your foot.
So now you're going to tell me about this job rating.
I certainly am. A job-rated truck is a truck that will fit the job.
Hold on a minute.
Yes?
How many sizes does an ordinary shoe store carry?
Well, I don't know exactly. I'd say perhaps 50 in men's shoes alone.
Well, you don't have 50 different trucks.
Oh, yes, we have. More.
More than 50?
Let me show you just 2 pages. Just 2 pages in our data book. Yes, sir, Dodge builds 175 different job-rated truck models. And remember, only Dodge builds job-rated trucks. Now, suppose you and I see if we can find a truck that will fit your job. We'll begin with the frame. Dodge builds 31 different frames, designed for 17 different wheelbase lengths. That way, you are assured of getting a truck frame that will provide a strong, rigid foundation for body and load. You save with a truck with the right frame.
Each Dodge job-rated truck is engineered with the right type and capacity springs, front, rear, and auxiliary. More than 50 different types and weights, so the springs are fitted to your job. There are 7 different Dodge truck engines designed for different loads and speeds and built to fit just about every trucking need. You save with a truck with the right engine. Take clutches. Naturally, your clutch load varies according to engine power and weight of load. Dodge considers every factor of load, road, and speed when recommending a clutch for a particular job-rated truck. Whatever the load, milk by the pint or steel by the ton, Dodge provides the right transmission to give the engine proper leverage for the work. These are job-rated transmissions with the right combination of pulling ability and speed. Dodge offers a range of 20 different single reduction, double reduction, and 2-speed rear axles. For all of these various capacities and designs of axles, Dodge has available a wide selection of optional gear ratios. Each of these axles is designed to meet specific requirements. They're job-rated, and the front axles are also job-rated.
I had no idea you Dodge fellows had such a big line.
I haven't told you anything about bodies.
Dodge builds 3 standard body types: pickups, panels, and stakes, and we make them in various sizes. Of course, many types of special bodies are also available. Everything from tank trucks to moving vans, refrigerated bodies to cattle trailers.
Yes, sir, we have a truck to fit practically every need in business and industry. And if we can't fit your trucking job, we'll tell you so. Dodge doesn't sell trucks that don't fit the job.
Just how would you go about fitting me?
I study your operation, cubic footage and weight of your average load, the kind of roads you travel and the grades, the length of your average haul and the time it must be made in, your loading and unloading conditions.
You go on it pretty thoroughly.
That's job rating. We select the truck that has been engineered to meet your requirements only after all the facts on your needs have been analyzed.
I suppose it's just as important to build it right as it is to design it right.
I'll say it is. And Dodge knows that, too. You see, we've been building trucks since 1915, more than 30 years. And now we have the largest exclusive truck plant in the world. You'd be interested in following a job-rated truck through production. The first step is for the factory to check the specifications on the order. After the specifications are okayed, they are broadcast by teletype to all parts of the plant. Now that particular job-rated truck starts into production. Beginning with the frame, the elements of a specified truck are assembled. The men get so they can feel the individuality of a truck as ordered. As he reads the specifications, he may say to himself, this truck is going to carry big loads on steep grades. Probably it's for one of those tough, hilly cities like Seattle or Pittsburgh.
after day, they come off the line in the biggest exclusive truck plant in the world. It's a modern and thoroughly efficient building, and it's operated by men with the know-how. Old-timers, many of them, who've been with Dodge Truck for more than a quarter of a century. That's how Dodge combines production with control. Each truck is, you might say, custom built, because Dodge takes your measure.
Suppose you bring your proposition to my office tomorrow morning at 10 o'clock.
I'll be glad to. And tell me, what's your new truck going to be doing?
Hauling stampings from the Watertown Dye Works. See you tomorrow.
I'll be here at 10 o'clock. Watertown Dye Works.
Come in.
Good morning.
Hello, Martin. Well, what are your recommendations?
There's the truck we recommend for your need. Model WFA 32, stake, code number 135.
Looks like any other 1.5-ton truck. What's different about it?
Plenty.
Also, how do you know that's what I need?
Well, let's go back to yesterday. After I left your office, I drove to the Watertown Dye Works and weighed and measured those stampings. 4 loaded racks will weigh about 3.5 tons and will fit into our 12-foot stake body. We'll mount that body on a truck with a 160-inch wheelbase to give you the proper amount of load on your front and rear axle. While I was at the dye works, I took a look at the dock. You have lots of room to back in, so the conventional cab model will meet your requirements. Of course, if there hadn't been plenty of room, we'd have specified the cab over engine model with its shorter turning radius. Suppose we go over your truck in detail. Here it is.
Where?
Right there. Model WFA 32, 160-inch wheelbase, code number 135. That gives you an ample allowance of approximately 9,000 pounds with the stake body and your usual load of 3.5 tons. That load rides on 750 10-ply tires, front and rear, with 7-inch rims and 20-inch disc wheels. We'll put dual tires on the rear. Now let's look at your job. The haul is 31 miles, so you'll want power to make time with a full load up those hills. And naturally, you'll also want your empty truck to get back on the job in a hurry. So we recommend the 2-speed axle that will provide power for heavy loads on hills and speed for light loads. That means low operating cost, both going and coming. Ordinary springs wouldn't stand up under those loads of yours. So for this job, we recommend spring equipment made of that wonderfully tough Amola alloy steel. There you are. 1,300 pounds capacity in front, 4,500 pounds in the rear, and with auxiliary rear springs of 1,100 pounds.
That sounds first rate. Springs are mighty important.
You bet they are. They should cushion the load and also give the driver an easy ride.
And I'm personally interested in a comfortable ride.
Let's think about your job again. You have to cover a 5-mile stretch of gravel road. And as you know, dust causes excessive engine wear. Therefore, for your protection, we recommend the large oil bath type air cleaner with 1-quart capacity. Our standard battery is big enough for quick starting and also for your lights. It has a capacity of 105 amperes. To make stopping easier and more positive on those steep hills, it's wise in your case to supplement our standard brake system with a vacuum-actuated brake booster. Notice that for your loads, we also recommend the 11-inch clutch instead of the standard 10-inch. And we believe you should have a frame reinforcement on your truck.
I'm in favor of a bigger clutch. But what about this reinforcement? Does that mean your standard frame isn't strong enough?
It's strong enough for normal use of a 1.5-ton truck, but your payloads run 3.5 tons. The reinforcement strengthens the frame where the greatest stress and strain are imposed by the heavy loads. In other words, this is just another instance of job rating the truck to your operation. Everything is taken into consideration. For example, the generator. The standard 35 ampere will be adequate. However, notice that we recommend installation of an engine governor set at 3,000 RPM.
What's that for?
With low gear reduction rear axles such as you will have, it's advisable to install a governor to control top engine speed, which lengthens the life of the engine. Also, for better protection of the engine, an oil filter with a replaceable filter element is recommended.
Finally, we come to the transmission. Our standard 4-speed type with satisfactory ratios for all phases of your job. There's a truck that is completely engineered at Detroit and is warranted to fit your loads. You were assured of getting the maximum of dependability, economy, and long life. Another truck may look about the same, but it simply can't perform like this Dodge job-rated truck can.
You know, Martin, it's just possible you've sold me a truck. And I don't mind saying you're a mighty convincing salesman.
Thanks. But as a matter of fact, when people learn how Dodge fits trucks to the needs of its customers, they just buy them. All we do is analyze the requirements and then, referring to our engineering data book, recommend the truck to fit those requirements.
I never realized before there were so many factors involved in buying the right truck.
Now you can certainly appreciate the value of job rating.
Right. And I want you to know I also appreciate the time you're spending with me. After all, I'm just a little fellow.
This may surprise you, but 70% of all truck owners in this country operate only one unit. It's individual owners like yourself who have spread the Dodge name and reputation. Of course, there are many big fleet owners who have used our trucks for years, and you can be sure they figure costs pretty close. Check that sometime when you're on the highway, and you'll see them. One reason Dodge trucks keep right on rolling along is the dealers' service shops. Nearly 4,000 of them from coast to coast. Displays of parts can be seen in dealer shops. That policy ensures the availability of parts when you need them. Dodge dealers made a great record during the war, keeping their customers' trucks on the road. It is your insurance that your Dodge truck will be kept in service.
I have another question. How do you know that your trucks will do all you claim? You don't drive them all.
No, sir, I don't, but somebody does. One group of our experts, the Dodge field engineers, find out from mechanics and drivers and farmers how our trucks are performing in actual use. Their information is studied by the engineers who design improvements on the basis of reports from the field and the laboratory tests. Is made up of our testing engineers.
The men who drive these trucks, and I mean actually drive them. You should see what they do out on the proving ground. Their proving ground is the United States. The mountainous roads of Pennsylvania and the Carolinas, the humid Everglades of Florida, the hot and dusty plains of Texas, the parching heat of Death Valley, the punishing steeps of the Rockies. That's where the engineers drive these trucks, heavily overloaded, for the severest possible tests. Meanwhile, testing in Detroit goes on all year round. Just as enthusiastic about Dodge dependability as our civilian owners are the GIs who drove more than 400,000 Dodge military vehicles in the war. Dodge has been building trucks for the Army since 1932, more than 9 years before Pearl Harbor. Those trucks were in there fighting right through the war. The sturdy Dodge 6x6 travels up a 60% grade, carrying a load of 17 men. This six-wheel Army vehicle has basically the same power plant and the same transmission that goes into our one-ton truck.
I see.
These Dodge trucks perform because they're built right for the right job, because they're job-rated. And remember, only Dodge builds job-rated trucks.
Well, Mr. Martin?
Well, there's the first of a good many trips that big fellow's going to make, right?
I'm betting on it.
How about you?
I bought it, didn't I? That's the best answer.
everyone who likes that clear, clean taste. Calling everyone who likes that clear, clean taste. It's a riot. It's a riot.
It sure is going to be a riot because it's the PM picnic tonight.
Boy, oh boy, what a honey of a job. The sweetest I ever tasted. To spread the news of the big shebang, PM's cooking up for all the gang who go for that clear, clean taste. PM picnic tonight. PM picnic tonight. Mr. Bear. Mr. Bear. There's a PM picnic everywhere, and there's not a moment to waste. Get out of your stump and get on the hump. For more of that clear, clean taste. Well, Mr. Squirrel, Mr. Squirrel, listen, friend, and all your worries will be erased. Yes, you'll get out of the rut and get more out of your nut at PM's picnic for fans of that clear, clean taste. PM picnic tonight. PM picnic tonight. Oh, Mr. Fawn, there's a barrel of fun and water, too, if you'll make haste to PM's big picnic in honor of that clear, clean taste. PM picnic tonight. PM picnic tonight. Stop, Mr. Rabbit. Please stop to spread the news to all the folks. What a race I've chased. But it's sure big news. PM's picnic for that clear, clean taste.
Extra! Read all the big news. Say, what's the big news all about?
Now, Mr. Tortoise, the news I bring may make you pout with your lethargic tortoise pace, and no yen for that clear, clean taste. No PM picnic for you. You're included out.
Okay, my friends. But if there's any fun about, I'll be right there. Don't you ever doubt. PM starts big campaign.
Folks, PM has done us proud with all this taste so rich. So let's all get right in there for that PM and pitch.
Say, what the hell?
Now, Mr. Tortoise, before that naughty word can gel.
Say, who are you?
I'm a PM salesman, sir, who's hastened here pell-mell to join the gang in praise of how PM rings the bell. Yes, I sure buy that clear, clean taste story. that PM has to tell. Boy, with these ads behind me, can I sell and sell and sell?
PM is pleasing millions with its clear, clean taste.
Wages and prices often play leapfrog. One jumps up, then the other, which means a steady rise in our cost of living. The Dilly Doll Factory is a happy shop. But Joe, our doll painter friend, seems to be a little down in the mouth, which even shows in his work. Joe is pretty discouraged because the high cost of living makes it harder and harder to make ends meet.
Hiya, Joe, old boy.
Hello.
Better look in that envelope.
Wow, a raise! And just in time to buy the kid a birthday present. What'll I get? Let's see. A dress? Bicycle? Roller skates? Shoes? A book? A doll? A doll! What's the price, miss? I work in a factory that makes this doll. $2 is too much.
I'm very sorry, sir, but your company charged us more for this shipment, so we had to raise our selling price.
We got a wage increase, all right, but it couldn't raise the price that much. It just takes a little wood, rubber, paint, cloth, and a phony wig to make that doll. There's only about 10 cents worth of materials in the whole thing. You pirates, crooks, bandits, you robbers!
You're right about the cost of raw materials in that doll, about 10 cents worth. Raw materials in practically everything we buy are worth little until labor transforms them into finished products. For example, how much do you think the raw materials cost in that car?
Oh, about $300.
You've got a surprise coming. It takes 4.5 tons of coal, 2 3/4 tons of iron ore, 50 pounds of cotton, 14 pounds of cured and finished wool, aluminum, zinc, lead, copper, and countless other raw materials to make an automobile. Without the addition of labor costs, these things are worth about $22. The raw materials require the accumulated labor of thousands of people in countless crafts to transform them into a finished automobile. Miners dig the coal and iron ore. Railroad and maritime workers transport these materials to the steel mill, where workers convert the ore into finished steel. The wages of railroad workers add to the value of steel when it is transported to automobile factories. The cotton that goes into a car accumulates labor cost from the farmer who tills the soil, from workers who sow the seed, and help to raise the cotton. Wages paid to other workers add to the value of the cotton as it is moved from the field to the cotton gin where it is processed. Other workers transport the cotton to the automobile factory. The wool that is used to make a car is worth little while it is still on the sheep. When the labor cost of a sheep shearer is added, the value of the wool is increased by his wages. When all of the parts and materials finally reach the factory for assembly, the labor cost of automobile workers must be added to the price of the car. In the $1,500 automobile, direct and indirect labor costs add up to approximately $1,200, or over 80% of the selling price. That's before taxes. And what happens to the other 20%, or $300? Raw material cost, $22. Profit to producers of raw materials and allied industries, $89. Profit to part manufacturers, $47. Profit to local dealer, $77. Profit to car manufacturer, $65. Now, when you add $400 for taxes, the cost is $1,900 to the buyer. Like the dolls you make, an automobile has a low raw material cost and a high labor cost, and that goes for practically everything we buy.
Oh, yeah? Well, what's the labor cost in a buck's worth of steak?
We'll start back at the farm where Bully Boy was raised. The selling price of meat has to include the labor cost in producing the feed, in building fences, and constructing housing for our animal friend. It takes a lot of costly care to get Bully Boy ready for the market. Wages have to be paid to railroad workers who provide our friend with care and courtesy on his way to the stockyards. Preparing Bully Boy's anatomy for the butcher shop costs money, too. The family butcher figures in his wages every time he sells a thick, juicy steak. Forgetting taxes for a moment, the labor cost in a dollar's worth of meat adds up like this. Workers raising beef, 24 cents. Transportation workers, 1/2 cent. Packing house workers, 42 cents. Meat delivery drivers, 1/2 cent. Butcher shop workers, 18 cents. The other 15 cents goes in profits to the retailers, the packers, allied industries, and to the farmers and ranchers. Most of the things we buy accumulate direct and indirect labor costs that add up to 85% of the selling price before taxes are added. Generally speaking, a wage raise means a corresponding rise in prices, unless productivity is increased proportionately.
What do you want, a guy with 4 arms? 4 arms? Say, I got a sensational idea.
To expand productivity, labor and management must work together to develop new ideas and techniques. To expand productivity, capital must finance the creation of more efficient tools and plants. The production of more and better goods at lower costs means that when you get a wage raise, it's a real raise.
A raise? A raise! I want to buy a doll. How much?
Now you've got a real wage raise, because you can buy more with what you earn. With increased productivity, wages can keep ahead of prices.
Last year in this district alone, we had 35 dealer changes. While our turnover is somewhat less than that of some of our competitors, it still remains one of our most serious problems. Of course, a certain percentage of dealer turnover is unavoidable. In the past year, we lost 2 dealers because of illness. 1 other for personal reasons. I believe it was family trouble. 3 were physically or temperamentally unsuited to the business and didn't realize it until they'd been in the business for several months. As for the rest, well, there were any number of reasons offered. Poor management, financial instability, insufficient working capital, overextended credit, poor location, inadequate facilities, and so forth. In trying to get to the root of this problem of dealer turnover, we made a study of all the locations and facilities involved. Of the 35 changes, 10 were made in facilities that were less than 5 years old. 8 were made in stations 5 to 10 years old. So with more than half the changes occurring in relatively new facilities, we can hardly say the facilities were the determining factor. As for the locations, we classified them as good, fair, and poor. 51% were good locations. 40% could be considered fair, and only 9% could be classed as poor. There's one other factor that might surprise you. The gallonage of the stations involved. Now, while 14 of the locations were marginal stations doing less than 10,000 gallons, 12 were doing a gallonage of 10,000 to 15,000. And 9 stations representing 26% of the total changes were doing anywhere from 15,000 to 25,000 gallons a month or better. And if a man can't make good money on a 15 or 20,000 gallon station, there's something wrong somewhere. We have a lot of dealers who do very well on 10 or 12,000 gallons. Now, since you men are closer to the situation than I am, I'd like to get your thoughts on the subject. What's the reason for this high rate of dealer turnover? Norman, you have any ideas on the subject?
It's awful hard to find good dealers today. I've got 2 dealers right now ready to quit, and I'm having a heck of a time trying to find replacements.
I realize good operators are not easy to find, but would you mind telling us about these particular dealers?
They're real problem accounts. Dissatisfied, not making enough money, gripe about the work, the long hours. Both of them are way underestimate. Don't have enough help.
Have you checked into them, Dave?
Yes, I have. Norman and I spent some time with them last week. I'm afraid we'll have to replace both of them. Frankly, if I'd been on this job at the time, I don't think I'd have approved either one of them.
You think that's where the fault lies, improper selection?
In some cases. I haven't had time as yet to cover the entire district.
How do you men feel about it? Don't you think we could exercise a little more care in selecting the men we put in these stations?
I suppose we could, but if the pressure's on to get a station open and you haven't got much to choose from, what are you going to do?
I realize that dealer procurement is a problem. But do we gain anything by putting a man in a station who's unsuited to the business? Every time we make a dealer change, it costs the company anywhere from $2,000 to $3,000, to say nothing about the loss of throughput and bad public relations. I'll go on record as saying I'd rather keep a station closed for a month or 2 than ruin its potential with the wrong operator.
But until you get working with a man, how can you tell if he's going to work out or not? I've got some dealers I didn't think too much of, and they're doing all right. Others I thought would be naturals didn't work out at all.
I've got a case like that. I put a dealer in I was sure couldn't miss. He turned out to be more trouble than any dealer I've got.
Would you care to discuss it, Bob? Might throw some light on the overall problem.
I don't mind. I'm talking about 6th and Piedmont. We opened a little over a year ago. Had a 20,000 estimate, so I wasn't going to put just anybody in there. I looked around a long time, and I finally picked a fellow I was sure was right. What a problem he turned out to be.
What made you so sure he was right?
Dolan. He was #1 man for one of my best dealers. He's a good salesman, good all-round serviceman, pretty smart. At least I thought he was. So I did a selling job on him like I never did before. Now he's on U.S. currency, still owes us about $600. He's ready to quit.
Who did he work for, Bob?
Haggerty. You saw his operation. You couldn't ask for any better training. And this was Haggerty's key man for 3 years.
Well, what went wrong?
Everything. Talk about a problem account. Dolan started out with close to 9,000 gallons. First 2 months, he went to 11. Then he drops down to 8,500, and he's been there ever since, with a 20,000 estimate.
Well, don't take that 20,000 gallon estimate too literally. That Shell station is doing 30,000. We should do as much or better. How do you account for the drop after the first 2 months?
Well, when he started out, he had some pretty good help. Stayed open till 10 o'clock. And the first thing I knew, he cut down to one man himself, posted a cent and a half over the market, started closing at 7. I told him he was doing the wrong thing. In fact, I said, Tim, if I knew you were going to operate like this, I'd never put you in this station.
Why? Because I won't stay open all night?
Well, I didn't say you ought to stay open all night. But I don't see how you can expect to build any volume closing at 7. Your competition is open till 10. You've got to be competitive.
For what? The 20 or 30 gallons of gas I'd sell? That's all I ever did after 7 o'clock. Doesn't pay the light bill, let alone the extra help.
You wouldn't need any extra help. I'm sure you could arrange your shift so you could stay open a couple hours longer.
I've only got one man. I had to let the other go.
That's too bad. Because there must be a lot of business you could get between 7 and 10. I don't think your competition would stay open if he didn't find it pays.
Well, I tried it, didn't I?
I know you did, Tim. But it takes more time than you've given it. It's not just the extra gasoline you'd sell. You could do lubrication and service work, too. A lot of people go for night lubrication. Might take a little time to build up, but I'm sure you can do it.
Not in this neighborhood. People come in here at night, buy $1 worth of gas. They want that on the cuff. Do you know what my light bill was last month? Over $100. I just can't afford it. Why do you think I let one of the boys go?
I think you're making a mistake, Tim. You can't operate on a low-volume economy and build volume.
Where's the money coming from? You think I can pay out every nickel I take in? I've got to live, too. I was better off working for Haggerty.
The potential is here, Tim. But you're never going to get the business unless you're competitive. I mean, in hours, service, and all the rest of it. Besides, you won't do anything to promote business.
Like what? That mail campaign you tried to sell me? That's just throwing money away.
A lot of my dealers say it brings them business. Haggerty uses it. Ask him about it. He'll tell you it pays off.
He can afford it. I can't.
What about neighborhood solicitation? That doesn't cost you anything.
Sure. That's all I've got to do. I told you I'm working with one man.
But you're never going to build up your volume this way. You're doing less than half the business you should be doing. Now, closing as early as you do and working short-handed, you're never going to make estimate.
Look, I told you I've got to make a living. Now, with the margin I'm working on, why should I break my neck to sell gasoline?
You're getting the same margin as everybody else in the area.
That's what you say. But the rent I'm paying?
The rent you pay has nothing to do with your margin on gasoline. It has to be charged against your total volume of sales.
You collect it against the gas, don't you?
Yes. We've got to base our rentals on gallonage. But actually, the way it figures out, the more gallonage you do, the less rent you pay on your operation. Because your rent has got to be charged against your total sales. That includes TBA, labor, oil and lubrication, everything you sell. We must have argued that one for an hour. I never realized a guy could be that thick. I'll bet he still doesn't understand it.
He's been in there a year and 3 months.
That's right. I'd have recommended checking him out months ago if I'd had a replacement.
Tell me this, Bob. When did you first suspect that he wouldn't work out?
I'd say about 6 months ago. That's when I realized what a bad businessman he was.
Wasn't it a little late to find that out after you put him in the station?
Well, like Frank says, you never know how they're going to work out. This one sure had me fooled. Even when his check bounced for a load of gas, I still couldn't believe he was in such bad shape. He didn't even have $100 in the bank when he wrote that check.
How do you account for his getting in that condition?
Got me. Doesn't gamble, play the horses, anything like that. It's just that he doesn't have any sense about handling money. Lives out of the cash drawer, gives credit to anybody who asks for it, never takes inventory or sticks his tanks, and the money he went in business with was borrowed money. On top of that, he bought a new car, a lot of equipment he didn't need. Now he blames me for the fix he's in.
In what way?
Well, he still owes us about $600. Yesterday, when I put the heat on to collect, he got real rough. You should have heard him. All I said was, if you hadn't gone in for all that fancy tune-up equipment, you wouldn't be in this fix.
The equipment's got nothing to do with it.
Well, sure it has. With the down payment, the notes and all.
I don't see that it's any of your business what equipment I buy.
But it is my business. It's my job to collect that dough. Gee whiz, Tim. You don't know the spot you put me in with the credit department.
I told you I'd pay it, didn't I?
Well, yes, but when? I've got to tell them something more definite than that. What about your mother-in-law? You talked to her yet?
No, and I'm not going to talk to her. I owe her enough as it is.
I've done everything I could to stall them. Now it's a question of getting the money or...
Well, what about the rent reduction? You know I can't pay the rent I'm paying.
It's costing us a lot more than we're charging you.
You're the one got me into this mess. Do you think I'd have borrowed the dough from my wife's family if I knew this station was a dog?
But it's not a dog. The station could easily do estimate if you'd go after the business.
Sure. All you care about is gas volume. But what about me? I've got to make a living out of it, see? And I'm not going to cut my price and work 16 hours a day just to pay you rent. Now, you get the rent down to where I can stay in business or get somebody to buy me out. I'm fed up.
I got you an adjustment for 3 months.
Big deal. Then you put me on a phony estimate.
But it's not a phony estimate. That Shell station's doing over 30,000. Tim, if you'd only get competitive and go along with our promotion, I'm sure you'd make out fine.
You heard what I said. You got me into this mess. Now you dig up somebody to buy me out. I'm through.
The guy is just so unreasonable, I can't tell him anything without his flying off the handle.
Have you talked to him about consolidating his debts and working on a budget?
He won't listen. If I even mention anything to him about cutting his living expenses, he blows a gasket.
You say Dolan's a good salesman and does a good service job.
I'll hand him that. Good housekeeper, too. Had to be to work for Haggerty as long as he did.
And don't you think we ought to do everything we can to help straighten him out? We have an obligation to Dolan. We put him in there. We sold him on investing his time and money in that location. Now we're morally obligated to see that he doesn't lose out.
It's his own fault. He wouldn't listen to anything I'd tell him.
It's not a matter of who's at fault, Bob. We're in this thing together. And if Dolan has failed somewhere along the line, we're just as much at fault as he is.
I don't see how. Put him in a good location, helped him set it up. The first week, I spent an awful lot of time with him. Even helped him set up his books. He didn't know the difference between a debit and a credit.
Wasn't that something you might have learned before you put him in the station?
I told him he ought to get somebody to keep his books, and he wouldn't go for it.
Well, Bob, put yourself in Dolan's place. Now, he was doing all right working for Haggerty. As I understand it, you were the one who sold him on taking over a station.
Well, sure I did. I thought with the training he got working for Haggerty, he ought to make a darn good dealer.
Did you discuss it with Haggerty before you approached Dolan?
Sure I did. That is, after I found out Dolan could raise the money.
Well, what did Haggerty have to say about it?
Oh, he didn't have any real objection. He said if that's what Dolan wanted to do, he wouldn't stand in his way. But he didn't think Dolan would make a go of it.
Well, did you ask him why? Haggerty's a pretty smart operator.
Well, sure he's smart. But I thought he just said that because he didn't want to lose his key man.
Bob, we all make mistakes. But since we put Dolan in that station, don't you think it's up to us to see that he makes a go of it?
But if he won't go along with the program...
Isn't it up to us to sell him on the program? To make him see the benefits of it? Let's look at it this way, fellas. I doubt that we'll ever find the perfect dealer. Sure, you'll find men who are good salesmen, good servicemen. Some of them might even be good merchandisers. Then you'll find other men who are pretty good businessmen, who understand figures, markup, inventory, the handling of personnel, and other fundamentals. But you're not going to find a man who's so proficient in all these things that you can just turn over a station to him and say, here it is, you're on your own. That's why we have a training program for dealers. Dealer trainers, sales and service conferences, inventory guides, the S75 system, and all the other dealer aids. That's also why we have merchandising salesmen, to work with dealers, analyze their deficiencies, and sell them on using all the things we know it takes to operate a station successfully.
I told Dolan about all those things. Spent a whole day doing it. In the first week or two, I spent a lot of time with him. Set up his shelves and displays, helped him train a couple of men, set up his books. I even worked the island for him the first day or two. I don't know what more I could have done.
Well, how much time did you spend with him after that? I mean, after the first couple of weeks?
Well, I'd call on him a couple of times a month. Sometimes more than that. Anytime I was out that way, I'd spend a little time with him.
What do you mean by a little time?
Well, I'd say 15 or 20 minutes. Sometimes an hour. All depends.
On these calls, what did you accomplish? What did you talk to Dolan about?
Well, the first few months, I had quite a job keeping him sold. He complained about everything. The location, people in the neighborhood, his help, the hours he had to put in. He had an idea he could walk in there and do $20,000 the first month.
Well, before you put him in, did you tell him it might take some time to build a business?
He claims I didn't, but I'm sure I did. I must have when I explained the minimum rental. Why we put him on straight gallonage the first 3 months.
In your discussions with prospective dealers, how do you fellas feel about it? Don't you think we have a tendency to oversell, to paint too rosy a picture?
If you don't, you're never going to sell them. The first question they ask is, how much money am I going to make?
You've got to sell a location on the basis of potential earnings, of course. But is it fair or is it good business to lead a man to believe he's going to get rich in the first few months?
I always tell a prospect it might take 6 months or a year to build volume up to where he'll begin to make real money.
Well, I go further than that. I get to meet the prospect's wife whenever I can, see how she feels about the business, the long hours, things like that.
In other words, you make sure that they understand the drawbacks as well as the advantages and benefits of the business. Don't you men agree that presenting it on that basis could help cut down dealer turnover? Because if a man isn't willing to make certain sacrifices in order to build his future, to build a business of his own, I wouldn't consider him a very good prospect. Would you?
But what do you do with the fellow that goes along with everything you say, agrees on hours of operation, the TBA program, and all the rest of it, then changes his mind after he's installed?
How often does that happen?
Plenty. I have it happen all the time. I never will forget one old-timer I put in a station about 6 years ago. Before I put him in, we had a perfect understanding on everything. A few months later, he reneges on everything he promised to do.
What were the circumstances? Do you recall them?
Well, take the TBA program. I sold him on Firestone, got him all set up. A few months later, he has some kind of a hassle with them on an adjustment or deliveries or something. First thing I know, he's off the program. Didn't matter what I said or did. I couldn't get him back on it.
But I know who you're talking about.
Wilkins. He's Dick's account now.
Have you been able to resell him, Dick?
No, sir, not a chance. Well, you met him. He's the old fellow we called on yesterday.
I remember him very well. In fact, I have a note to talk to you about him when we get through here. He can be sold.
Wish I knew how. I tried everything. Even stuck my neck out and promised him some tea lights. Well, I didn't really promise him. I said I'd try to get him if he'd go along in the program. Said he doesn't believe in promises. He'd been around too long.
Do you think it's good business to make promises like that?
No, but I tried everything else and couldn't get to first base. Here's an account used to do 16,000 gallons. Now he's down to 12. Doesn't want to do any more, as much as told me so. He gives me more trouble than any account I've got. Always wanting something. The other day I brought him some maps. I had to make a special trip because he insisted he had to have them right away. When I got there, what do I see but 50 cases of Arctic stacked up in the lube bay? I was burned up, but I didn't say anything about it at first. I just said, "Hello, Elmer. Here are your maps."
Leave them in the office.
Okay. But Elmer, what are you doing with all the Arctic?
Well, now, that's a dumb question. What do you think I'm going to do with it? Drink it?
Gee whiz, Elmer, I told you I had you down for 50 cases of antifreeze.
I didn't say I'd buy it, did I?
No, but you do sell Texaco products. Well, what I mean is, this is a Texaco station, and people coming in here expect to find Texaco products. Ours is just as good, if not better, than any antifreeze in the market. You know that.
Yeah, it could be. I got a deal on it. Besides, you ain't got no big thermometers like they got.
Well, that may be so, Elmer, but well, look at the spot you put me in. If my boss finds out you put that stuff in here, it's going to be just too bad for me. I don't think you're being fair, Elmer. I do everything I can to help you. You know that. I was clear across town, but when I heard you needed some maps, I dropped what I was doing and got them right over here for you.
Well, that's your job, ain't it?
Well, yes, of course it is. But it's also my job to sell our products. See that the company gets a fair shake.
You know what our policy is on rentals. Since you won't do anything to get the gallonage you should be getting, the least you can do is go along with our TVA program.
Are you going to go harping on that again? I'm paying you rent, ain't I? I'm selling your gas and oil. What more do you want?
If the rent you're paying doesn't cover our cost per gallon. The estimate's $14,000. You know that. The company isn't in business to lose money.
Oh, now you're going to tell me the company's losing money.
For this location, we are.
What are you talking about? Well, they don't even own it. I know the landlord.
We do have a lease on it, sure, but it's the same thing. We have a long-term rental obligation.
Well, all I can say is if the company's paying too much rent, it ain't my fault. They're the ones who made the deal.
But there's no reason why this station shouldn't do estimate. You did $16,000 at one time.
Ain't the same neighborhood it was then. And that was before you fellas went crazy building all those new stations.
He's got an answer for everything. Anytime I pin him down and prove where he's wrong, he gets mad and tells me he was running a station before I was born. So far as he's concerned, I'm just an errand boy. Fellas, I realize there are dealers who can prove pretty difficult at times. I've had my share of them, too, when I was a salesman. But aren't we inclined to place too much emphasis on personalities? We're in business with our dealers on a business basis. We're all interested in the same thing, working toward the same end, to operate at a profit. And if a dealer's making money in a station and we're getting a fair return on our investment, everybody's happy. So why don't we forget about the personalities involved and approach every situation on a realistic business basis?
But in order to get a dealer to work with you, you have to sell yourself first, don't you?
I've heard a lot of salesmen say that, but I can't quite go along with it. Oh, it's true that you have to gain the respect of your prospective dealer. But you know of any better way to gain that respect than through a thorough understanding of the dealer's problems? And by proving that you can help him lick those problems?
Well, I agree with you, sir. But sometimes things happen that you have no control over, and the dealer takes it out on you. They can get so unreasonable at times you can't even talk to them.
I don't quite understand what you mean by unreasonable. Dealers, like everyone else, will often make some unreasonable request. They're apt to ask for all kinds of things. But if you give them a valid reason as to why a request can't be granted, I don't think you'll find the average man unreasonable. At least I've never found them so.
Oh, I don't mean it quite that way. I mean, well, I have a dealer. One of the best dealers I've got. We used to get along fine. That is up to about 2 months ago. Anytime I needed an order for 50 cases of oil, a promotion, displays, anything, he was the one guy I could depend on. He sure has changed. Now he won't go along with anything. He doesn't seem to care whether school keeps or not.
There must be some reason for it. You suppose it might be family trouble?
Not that I know of. Only thing I can think of is, well, we had a little trouble about his lift. We got it straightened out, finally. But ever since, I can't talk to the guy. He keeps threatening to quit, says the facilities are no good, complains about the deliveries, says the company doesn't give a darn about the dealers. He keeps talking about the dealer association and what they're going to do.
Do I know the dealer?
Nielsen, on 3rd and Main.
Nielsen? That's hard to believe. He's a 20-year dealer. I called on him not too long ago. He's an excellent dealer.
It wasn't my fault about the lift. Wasn't anything I could do about it.
What was the trouble?
Well, we got a contractor over there as soon as we could. But the leather was shot, and we didn't have any at the buck plant. They ordered some, but it took about 3 weeks to get them. Nielsen was so burned up, I'm surprised he didn't call the division office.
It took 3 weeks to get a lift leather?
Just about. I'm sure it was more than 2 weeks.
There's no excuse for that.
No, it shouldn't have taken that long. I know the order was written up. Whether it got lost in the shuffle or somebody forgot to mail it, I don't know. But there wasn't anything I could do about it.
Well, did you follow it up?
Well, the first week or so, I took it for granted it was on its way. Finally, Nielsen yelled so much about it, I put in a long-distance phone call. That's when I found out they hadn't received the order.
I'm sorry to hear that.
I don't blame him for being sore, but why does he have to take it out on me?
Well, do you realize what that might have cost Nielsen in time, money, and lost customers? To say nothing about the inconvenience and aggravation it caused him?
It wasn't my fault.
Well, if you were in Nielsen's place, would it matter to you whose fault it was? So far as he's concerned, you're the Texas company. And it's your responsibility to see that his equipment and facilities are maintained.
But if somebody slips up on the order, I don't see how I can be held responsible.
Well, Jim, where a man's livelihood is concerned, you don't wait a week or 10 days to follow through. I'd have had that leather there in a matter of hours, not days.
Well, that week I was so jammed up, I didn't know whether I was coming or going. I had a dealer change, price surveys to make.
I realize there are times when you fellas have your hands full, and there don't seem to be enough hours in the day. But don't you think that's a matter of organizing your work? Of doing first things first? I can't think of anything more important than keeping faith with our dealers. They're the backbone of our whole marketing structure. Yet here's a case of a 20-year dealer who has every reason to feel that we've let him down. In this case, we had a dual responsibility. First, it's in our best interest to see that his facilities are in good working order. Second, and equally important, as a customer, Nielsen's entitled to good service, entitled to every assistance we can possibly render. And if we fail in our responsibility, is it any wonder that we have this high rate of dealer turnover? Now, I don't intend to get into the details of any of the cases we've discussed here today. That's Dave's job. He'll spend all of his time in the field with you, working out individual problems. However, there are a few fundamentals I'd like to point out. First is the matter of being more objective about your job. Have any of you ever tried to define your job in a simple sentence?
Well, it's to sell product, isn't it? That is, to sell as much product as you can at the lowest cost per gallon.
You sell the product to the consumer?
I used to have some consumer business. Now I just have my dealer accounts.
Then aren't you dependent on your dealers to move the products you have to sell?
Yes, but we've got to sell them first.
You have to sell your dealers, of course. But is that the extent of your job, to sell Texaco products to dealers?
We have to sell them on a lot of things. Housekeeping, hours of operation, TBA, promotion.
Why?
Well, we've got to make our quotas.
Yes, you do have sales objectives. But isn't the job a lot broader than that? Looking at it objectively, wouldn't you say that it's your job to build a successful dealer organization? If all your dealers were operating successfully, you wouldn't have to worry about quotas and rental recoveries. You wouldn't have to chase around making collections and doing a lot of things that now take up most of your time, would you?
Well, no. If they were all first-team dealers like Haggerty or some of my other dealers, it'd be a cinch. But where are you going to find them?
Well, that's my point. You don't find them. You've got to develop them. Well, you've got to start with a likely prospect, of course. But once you've found that prospect, then it's up to you to develop him step by step until he's doing all the things he should be doing to operate successfully.
That's what I tried to do with Dolan. But with his attitude, it's just a waste of time.
Well, what about our attitude? Don't you think that sometimes our attitude might have something to do with it?
I don't see how. As far as Dolan's concerned, I've spent more time with him than any dealer I've got.
I don't doubt that. But think back a moment. Isn't it true that for the most part, the time you spend with dealers is spent trying to sell them something you want to sell? Like an order for some oil, antifreeze, or anything else you happen to be pushing at the time?
Isn't that part of the job?
Yes, it is. But look at it this way. When you sell a prospective dealer on taking over a station, what is it you're selling? A location or an initial stock of merchandise?
You sell them both. You've got to sell them on the location, what it's going to do, and you've got to sell them on stocking the right merchandise.
Well, wouldn't you say that what you're really selling is an opportunity? An opportunity to cash in on the wide public acceptance of Texaco products? An opportunity to join the family of Texaco dealers operating in all 48 states? Because aside from all the advertising, promotion, and dealer aids, you're also offering Texaco's years of experience and know-how in successful marketing. Then you go one step further, don't you? You tell a prospect exactly what he can expect in the way of assistance from the company and what the company's going to expect from him. In other words, it's a two-way deal. Both parties undertake certain obligations in order to arrive at a mutually beneficial business arrangement. The company stands to gain a good representative dealer, and the dealer has every opportunity to build a sound, profitable business of his own.
But what happens when the dealer won't play ball? Sure, before you put them in, they'll buy anything you tell them. A few months later, they forget all about it, or slough off, or find all kinds of excuses for not doing what you want them to do.
Well, here again, isn't it all a matter of attitude? It's not a question of what you want the dealer to do or what he may want you to do. It's a matter of both parties working together to achieve a common purpose, to build a successful operation. Because the success of each of the parties is dependent upon the success of the other. In other words, in order for any business relationship to succeed, it must prove mutually beneficial to all concerned. Let's take the case of Dolan. If Bob had had a complete understanding before he put him in that station, he'd be on a much sounder basis.
I went over the whole deal with him, told him exactly what he'd have to do. Then I spent the better part of 2 weeks getting him started.
Well, let's grant that you did a thorough job of installation. You helped him get set up, got him organized. Let's say that you even got him off to a good start. Does that fulfill our obligation?
Well, I worked with him after that. I called on him once or twice a month.
You called on him, yes. But how objective were those calls? Did you lay out a definite program he could follow? Did you examine every phase of his operation? Analyze his shortcomings? You knew, for example, that Dolan didn't like paperwork, didn't understand figures and the value of records. Don't you think it was up to you to sell him on the importance of a good bookkeeping system and the inventory guide?
I told him he ought to set up the guide, get somebody to keep his books.
Well, telling a man what he ought to do and selling him on doing it are two different things. We know how vital records, inventory control, and all the other phases of management are to the success of a business. But many of our dealers don't realize their importance because they lack experience in that direction. Therefore, with an equal interest in the success of their operations, don't you think it's up to us to convince our dealers that their success and the success of our stations hinges on good management?
You can't force a man to do things he doesn't want to do. You can't put pressure on them. That's against policy.
Yes, it is. Besides, do you accomplish anything with pressure? You can't force anyone to do anything. Well, you might get them to go through the motions for a while and gain their ill will. No, Bob. The only way you can get anyone to really do anything is to make them want to do it, to motivate them by getting them to see the benefits to them of doing it, or to make them realize the serious consequences of their failure to do it. You say you helped set up Dolan's books and suggested getting somebody to keep them up. When did you learn his records were inadequate?
A little too late, I'm afraid. I'd say about 6 months too late. I didn't realize what bad shape he was in till we had to put him on U.S. currency.
I'm glad you realize that. Fellas, there's no trick to being a Monday morning quarterback. We can all recognize where the mistakes were made, even our own mistakes. The trick is to learn how to avoid making them. And so far as our dealer relations are concerned, all I can tell you men is this. If your attitude is right, if you're sincerely interested in the development and welfare of your dealers, interested in developing them into successful businessmen, you're bound to come out on top. Because in serving their best interest, you're serving your own interests, and the best interests of the company as well. Make it a rule never to call on a dealer with the thought of selling him something you want to sell. Instead, approach him on the basis of what is it going to take to make this dealer a first-team dealer? Working as a team, what can we do to make him more successful? Approach your job on that basis. You can't miss. Because then you'll be building a dealer organization of which you can be proud, and building your own future as well. Think it over.
Step right up, ladies and gentlemen. Step right up and hear about one of the niftiest remedies to come down the pike in many a day. Yes, sir, old Dr. Morgan has the answer to all your ills and ailments. Ah, there, sir. Step up just a little closer. You look like the discriminating kind of man that ought to know more about Dr. Morgan's famous remedy. You have trouble concentrating on your work? Are you nervous? Are you subject to headaches? Do you suffer from loss of appetite, digestive disturbances? Yes, sir, just as I thought. A sad case. You could use old Dr. Morgan. Tell me, my friend, do you find yourself exhausted on a hot day? Uncomfortable? Dry? No, that sort of thing will never do you any good. All right, my friend, now that we've established the fact that you're subject to all these different kind of ailments, I'll tell you what I'm going to do. I have here a small sample bottle of Dr. Morgan's famous remedy. Now, for the small sum of $25, I'm going to make you a present of this bottle. Water. What's that you say? Water? Well, you may think you fooled old Dr. Morgan, but you're absolutely right. That's exactly what it is. Good, clean, cool, pure water. Aqua Pura, nature's best. Just a minute, my friend. You don't have to take my word for it that water's just the thing you need to cure you from nervous tension, headache, indigestion, and all those other ills and ailments. Why, do you know how important water is to you? How much do you weigh?
About 150 pounds.
150 pounds. You know what you're made of? Well, I'll tell you. You're made up of 26 pounds of carbon, a half pound of sulfur, a pound and a half of phosphorus, 2.5 pounds of calcium, iron, sodium, etc. In addition, my friend, I'd say you were about 19 pounds of gin. Hydrogen, oxygen, and nitrogen, that is. And also 100 pounds of water. So, out of your 150 pounds, 100 pounds of you is water. In other words, my friend, you're all wet.
Hey, mister, can you tell me where I can get a drink?
Well, I can see you're a man of discriminating taste. I can see you're a man of fine sense, because you want to know right away where you can get a drink of that cool, clean, refreshing water. And that's no trouble at all when you got plenty of those General Electric water coolers on hand. Well, I just happen to have one with me today, so if you'll step right over here, I'll see that you get that drink. Ain't she a beauty? And look at that sturdy steel cabinet. Nobody else makes a cabinet like that. And take a look at this inviting white china top. Sanitary? Well, I'll say it is. The germs hate the very sight of it. And talk about convenience. Why, you can step up to that GE cooler, just step on a pedal, and there's your cool, refreshing drink like this, see? Look, no hands. There you are, my friend. Have a drink for yourself. Where is it? Somebody must have turned it off. Hey, boys, the man's thirsty. Give him some water. Isn't that refreshing, my friend? So long, Bud. Now, I'd like to point out some of the finer features of this fine General Electric water cooler. The kind of features that have made General Electric the leader in the water cooler business for years and years and years. For example, this beautiful white china top. Do you think it's an accident that the water doesn't spill over and splash like it does with ordinary coolers? Not at all. General Electric engineers made that basin extra deep and designed it so every drop of water would go down the drain. You won't find a puddle or a pool of water standing in a GE cooler. No place for bacteria and germs to go to work. And it's easy to clean. Now, talking about keeping clean, that's exactly what the beautiful bronze metallic finish does for the GE cooler. It won't finger mark, smudge, or catch dust and dirt. It's easy on the eyes, blends in with almost any decorating scheme. Now, let's take a look at this chromium-plated bubbler. Some people might call it a mouthpiece, but it isn't on a GE cooler. It's specifically designed to keep the mouth away from the nozzle and to prevent water from the mouth dropping back on the nozzle. Another sanitary feature for your protection. When you step on the pedal, the water comes out at just the right height. It doesn't jump around.
That's more GE engineering for you. But as in every General Electric product, it's not just what you see on the outside that makes the unusual value. It's the heart that really counts. What you get in any General Electric product is the result of years and years of research, engineering, and experience. Now let's look inside and see what really makes this cooler such a fine value at any price. See how easy it is? And look at all that value that's in there. You see, each and every adjustment and part is accessible from the front. You don't need a road map to find your way around in a GE water cooler. Now right there is the fingertip water temperature control, which adjusts the refrigerating mechanism to give you just the temperature you want. Once you set it, you can forget it. Now on your right, you'll see a simple control for the water stream. Now you don't need a fancy wrench to set this. An ordinary dime will do the trick. Now getting down to the refrigerating mechanism, you find the famous General Electric sealed condensing unit. The kind of unit that has served faithfully in General Electric refrigerators for more than 20 years. More than 2 million of these machines have operated continually for more than 10 years and are still going strong. Now you don't have to take my word for it. General Electric gives a 5-year warranty with every sealed refrigeration mechanism. If anything goes wrong with it in that time, General Electric replaces the condensing unit or repairs it without charge to you. Now, I ask you, my friends, could anything be fairer than that? Now, I don't want to go into a lot of details. I don't want to confuse you with technical terminology and mumbo-jumbo. I don't want to talk to you about stainless steel evaporators, except to let you know that you can count on long life because of the fine construction. I don't want to talk to you about electrostatic action, except to tell you that you don't have to worry about it in a GE water cooler. I don't want to talk to you about destructive resonant vibration, except to tell you that you can install GE water coolers in a factory and they won't fall to pieces in a few months. I don't want to bother you about the unusual non-clogging General Electric pre-cooling system that helps reduce operating costs. And I wouldn't think of confusing you about insulation, automatic air vents, tin water lines, and stress skin cabinet construction. In short, all I want to tell you about GE water coolers is this. You walk up, step on the pedal, and get a good, clean, pure drink of water every time. Excuse me. Thanks. Hey, what are you doing with half a glass of water? Don't you know you need 6 or 7 full glasses of water a day? Why don't you get a drink out of the GE water cooler?
I don't want to drink it. I want to put out a fire.
You want to put out a fire with half a glass of water?
Well, the fire's half out.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, I want to thank you for your kind attention. Ah, here's another gentleman stepping up. Step right up, sir. Just in here a little closer. You look like the discriminating kind of man that ought to know more about Dr. Morgan's famous remedy. Now, with a small sum of $25, I'm going to make you a present of this trial model.
Every product or service we know today once came from someone's ideas. Ideas that help protect our country and our lives. Ideas that produce the results of research and development. Ideas that reduce costs, increase productivity, or improve performance and quality in manufacturing and processing. Ideas that produce all the things we need and want, all the services we use, new ways of doing things, new uses for existing products. And of course, ideas that help us get more fun out of life. Today's world is highly competitive. To compete successfully takes creative thinking, the only kind of thinking that produces sound ideas. American industry needs a continuing flow of ideas to find new ways of doing things to meet the competition from foreign imports. And here at home, new ideas are equally important. Companies must constantly produce new ideas to successfully compete with each other. And the price of failure often means elimination from the market. Competition is even keener for the individual. The man or woman who gets ahead today, who stands out from the crowd, is the one who thinks creatively, who comes up with sound ideas for doing a more effective job. It once was thought that only a certain few could produce ideas, people like Benjamin Franklin, who produced so many new inventions. A different kind of harmonica, bifocal glasses, the Franklin stove, scores of other things that people needed and wanted. And he invented the lightning rod, too, after proving that lightning is electricity and proving it the hard way. Naturally, most of the attention still goes to relatively few people, outstanding inventors, scientists, writers, painters, and the like. But today, we know that sound, profitable ideas can come from anyone, from people in jobs where creativity is least expected, as well as from those who are paid just to be creative. Every one of us, to some degree, has the ability to generate and produce ideas, whether our job is to solve problems in engineering, research and development, marketing, finance, manufacturing, or any other business function. Each of us can produce ideas that will increase our value to our organizations and ourselves. The only question is, how can we produce more and better ideas? First, let's see what we mean by creativity, the ability to solve problems and ideas. One definition says it is the mental process by which we combine and recombine past experience with modification in such a way that we arrive at new patterns, new configurations, and new arrangements. For example, the engineer first combines and recombines past experience, then modifies and changes the old arrangement until he arrives at a new and better design. But whether the problem is to design a simple gadget or devise another way of doing a better job, the important thing is to produce a sound idea and then develop it. This process of solving problems has certain basic characteristics that are simple and easy to grasp. First, an idea doesn't just happen by itself. It must be generated and developed. Creative thinking is an active process, whether it's a simple thing like a child putting together an arrangement of building blocks, finding the solution to a crossword puzzle, solving a complex problem in chemistry, physics, or mathematics, or working out any of the less exciting problems we all face in our day-to-day jobs. Even though there may be no physical action involved, there is always mental action, plenty of it, going on in solving a problem. So the first characteristic of creativity is that it requires mental action. Second, solving any problem or getting an idea calls for conscious action. When people get together to brainstorm ideas, they don't just sit waiting for ideas to come out of the blue. They're making conscious effort to generate ideas. In attribute listing, another technique, a group of people make a study. First, they make a list of a product's attributes or characteristics, then apply these attributes to something else. Like this light meter. One of its attributes or characteristics is a sensitive indicator that responds to light. In this instance, each member of the group consciously tries to think of other uses for this kind of indicator, to measure sound or electric current or temperature or other applications for the characteristic. The point is that their thinking is conscious and deliberate. A third characteristic of the creative thinking process is that it does not have to produce a new idea. The aerosol spray idea was first developed for insecticides, but later it was adapted to cleansers, to hair preparations, to suntan lotions and other uses. These adaptations didn't involve revolutionary ideas, but they did sell a lot of merchandise. Thus, creative thinking produces answers to such questions as, what are other uses for our present product? How can we adapt similar products to our use? How can we modify our present products for new uses? Can we add to it or subtract from it? Creative thinking can make existing ideas more profitable without trying to find completely new ideas. The final characteristic of solving problems creatively is the fact that the idea usually fills a need. Necessity is the mother of invention, and pure research often discovers something for which there is no immediate use. But even pure research is conducted on the firm conviction that all knowledge is useful and is needed. Even though an idea doesn't fill an immediate need or a want, experience shows that sooner or later a useful application will be found. For example, when the idea of radar was first conceived, many people questioned its usefulness. Today, it is making a priceless contribution both in war and in peace. Thus, creative thinking has 4 basic characteristics that result in sound ideas. Now, let's see just what elements are necessary for creative thinking. Here's a mathematical formula that expresses them in symbols. And here's what these symbols mean. The C, of course, refers to creativity, the process by which we solve problems and produce sound, practical ideas. The I is for native intelligence. Each one of us was born with some intelligence. It's what we do about developing it that counts. T is our individual talents. And bear in mind that we all have some basic talents. E stands for our experience and environment, the things we learn as we go along and the climate in which we learn them. A means attitude that affects our thinking, either our own attitude or that of our organization, attitude that helps or hinders us from creative thinking. The small letter I is imagination, the all-important element that lifts our thinking out of the routine and helps us stand out from the crowd. And finally, the distinctive symbol on the end stands for infinity, because imagination is unlimited. As Professor Albert Einstein once said, imagination is more important than knowledge, for knowledge is limited, whereas imagination embraces the whole world. While the factors involved in the creative process can be expressed mathematically, there is an actual step-by-step procedure for getting the right answer to any problem. The first step in this procedure is to accumulate all available information, learning what others have done toward solving a problem similar to the one with which we are faced. The next step, known as trial and error, consists of going beyond what others have done and experimenting on your own. This is the stage in which you let your imagination take over and figure things out for yourself. This is the phase when you change, modify, create to get something better. In developing any idea, there comes a period when conscious thinking produces no further help in solving the problem, when you keep going by letting your subconscious take over. At this stage, your brain is digesting all the information and thought you've put into solving the problem. These are the preliminary phases that lead to the most exciting step of all, the idea stage, when everything becomes crystal clear, when your natural creativity takes over and produces the idea that solves the problem. The final step is being sure you have the right answer to the problem, evaluating your idea objectively. This means making sure you have considered all the elements, weighed them objectively, and that you have expressed your thoughts correctly. Now, since there is a step-by-step procedure to solving problems and producing ideas, why don't we produce more and better ones? The reason lies in natural blocks to creativity. Psychologists classify these blocks as perceptual, cultural, and emotional. But regardless of how they're classified, if we recognize them, understand them, and overcome them, we can think clearly and creatively. One of the blocks to problem solving is lack of confidence in our own creative ability. Few of us think of ourselves as idea men. We simply can't picture ourselves in the ivory tower environment from which we believe most ideas emerge. Too much conformity also can block creative thinking. Often we fail to think creatively because we're afraid of rocking the organization boat. We forget we are individuals who must think for ourselves. An especially complicated group of blocks to problem solving consists of what are known as personal neuroses, a whole range of imaginings and fears that keep us from thinking clearly, prevent us from getting ideas and expressing them. But the block that most often prevents us from solving on-the-job problems creatively is simply failure to use our natural abilities. The same abilities to which we give free rein when we're off the job. Even when we get good ideas, too often we fail to express them because we're too concerned with what people think about us or how they'll react to our suggestions. Remember when surveys showed that car buyers wanted only bigger, fancier automobiles? Yet a few creative thinkers disregarded the figures and succeeded in building a large and profitable market for smaller cars. And often we worry too much about reason and logic. Just remember, all the reasons a bee can't fly. Finally, we all too often let our emotions stand in the way of clear thinking. Everyday emotions like fear, anger, pride, or jealousy, as well as built-in preferences, prejudices, and opinions. These, then, are the major blocks to thinking creatively, the barriers to success. When we recognize them, when we understand how they affect us, and when we consciously try to overcome them, we are on the way to creative thinking. Now, what can we do specifically to help solve our day-to-day problems more effectively? One thing is to avoid being mentally rigid, looking at a situation the same narrow way every time. Instead, we must learn to look at problems in different ways, from different points of view. In addition to looking at the problem from every angle, we must be sure we consider all the factors involved, not just concentrate on part of the problem and overlook other parts that may be important. Another way to get the right answer to a problem is to be sure we understand it before we try to solve it. And getting too close to the problem often is even more frustrating. We must figuratively stand back so we can see it objectively. And of course, getting all the facts before jumping to a conclusion is important, no matter what the problem is. Very often, the solution to one problem can provide the answer to many similar problems. Now, here are a few basic suggestions for developing your creative ability in your day-to-day job. First, write down all the ideas you get about your job and about your career, whenever and wherever you get them. Broaden your interests. Read books. Develop new hobbies. And get away from yourself. Meet new people. Get the benefit of their experience and thinking, and add it to your storehouse of knowledge. Systematically convert your ideas into concrete suggestions. Even one good idea will win recognition and gain new respect for your ability. And if you are responsible for the performance of others, place your most creative people where they can spark others into producing ideas. Get your entire organization thinking creatively. Now, let's review how we can solve our day-to-day problems more effectively and produce more and better ideas. First, remember that everyone has creative ability. Regardless of the kind of work you do or the degree of your responsibility, you can be more effective in your job. Next, solving any problem is a conscious act. The problem must be thought through. Third, you must put to work all the factors that contribute to creativity: intelligence, talent, experience, environment, attitude, and perseverance. Fourth, recognize the steps you must go through in the creative process: gathering information, experimenting on your own, letting your subconscious work on the problem, getting the idea that will solve the problem, and finally, evaluating your solution objectively. Fifth, recognize and remove such blocks to creative thinking as lack of confidence, too much conformity, personal neuroses, and failure to use your creative ability. Sixth, if you are convinced you're right, don't worry too much about what people think. And don't even be too concerned with reason and logic. Seventh, don't let your emotions get in the way of clear thinking. And finally, to help ensure the right answer to any problem, look at it from different points of view. Consider all parts of the problem. Be sure you understand the problem before you try to solve it. Don't get too close to the problem. Don't jump to conclusions. And consider applying the solution to one problem whenever you are faced with similar problems. Remember, in today's competition, the man who gets ahead is the man who thinks creatively. The only kind of thinking that solves problems effectively and produces more and better ideas.